Welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today. Because if you're the kind of person who loves, taking a magnifying glass to raw data and peeling it back layer by layer, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're taking a hyper-concise piece of source material, and it is going to trigger this massive geographic and cultural journey across continents. We're going to break it down, map the whole thing out, and see exactly what's hiding inside a truly brief moment of audio. I absolutely love this kind of structured breakdown, so let's not waste any time.
Okay, let's dive into this. Literally everything in today's explainer revolves entirely around one single solitary number, 6. Now, I know, it's a small integer, right? But in the context of our source material, it carries some staggering weight. These 6 specific nations encompass billions of distinct lives, centuries of rich cultural history, and just massive swaths of the Earth's most diverse geography. So definitely keep this number in the back of your mind as we move forward, because it represents a super precise but incredibly expansive boundary for everything we're about to explore.
And here it is, the exact, unedited source quote. Malaysia, Germany, Russia, Philippines, India, Indonesia. I mean, just listen to how incredibly brief that is. We're talking about a handful of words delivered in, a fleeting second of audio. But when you contrast that lightning-fast delivery against the millennia of deep-rooted cultural history contained within those names, honestly, the sheer scale compressed into this tiny sentence is almost breathtaking. The big takeaway here, right from the jump, is that brevity absolutely does not mean a lack of scope.
All right, moving on to Section 1, the 6 nations. Let's catalog the data.
Malaysia, Germany, Russia, the Philippines, India, Indonesia. By reading them exactly as they were spoken, we kind of strip away all the noise and focus purely on the entities themselves, right? These are the 6 pillars of our source material, and honestly, each one is a world unto itself. We've got Malaysia, fundamentally defined by its dual landmasses separated by the vast South China Sea, blending incredibly diverse cultural influences. Then there's Germany, this densely populated industrial heart right in the center of Europe, steeped in centuries of complex continental history. We have Russia, literally the largest country on Earth, a staggering geographic expanse crossing 11 distinct time zones. Then, the Philippines, an incredible tropical archipelago of over 7,000 individual islands, with a deeply unique blend of Eastern and Western cultural legacies. We move to India, an entire subcontinent offering unmatched linguistic diversity and a population density that makes it a true global powerhouse. And finally, Indonesia, the largest island country on the planet, stretching right across the equator with some unmatched volcanic geology. These 6 names, they aren't just data points, they are massive, breathing centers of human civilization. Which brings us to Section 2, the source anomaly. Let's look at the pacing and punctuation.
And this part brilliantly illustrates a really fascinating hidden detail in the delivery. Look at this. Between Russia and the Philippines, there is absolutely no comma. They just run directly into each other. Russia, Philippines. And then, right after India, boom, we have a hard period, a full stop. India, Indonesia. Transcript punctuation actually reflects spoken rhythm. So that missing comma, it suggests a rushed breath, a rapid-fire delivery where the speaker linguistically connected those 2 vastly different nations. Think about the geographic reality of that for a second. The speaker bridged the freezing, sweeping tundras of northern Russia and the balmy, tropical environments of the Philippine Islands in one single unbroken breath. Then that hard stop before Indonesia? It implies a distinct, almost dramatic pause, kind of separating the world's largest archipelago from the rest of the list. It's just a fascinating look at how raw data is actually delivered.
So let's move to Section 3, geographic distribution, and see how this builds when we start mapping the nations. Now, what's really wild here is the massive, undeniable regional lean when we map these 6 data points continentally. 4 of our entities fall squarely into Asia. Only 1 sits entirely in Europe, and 1 is officially designated as transcontinental. So it becomes immediately apparent that our speaker's extremely brief list is just heavily anchored in the Asian continent. But you have to remember, it's not just a geographic concentration, it's a massive cultural clustering. By leaning so heavily eastward, the source material anchors itself in regions defined by ancient trade routes, rapidly expanding modern economies, and incredibly deep, interlocking histories.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is exactly which nation falls into which regional bucket, and the sheer diversity packed into those buckets. In our dominant Asian category, we have Malaysia, the Philippines, India, and Indonesia, and those 4 alone, they represent vastly different cultural cornerstones. You go from the deep Hindu traditions and diverse spiritual landscape of India to the massive Islamic majority of Indonesia and then the strong Catholic heritage of the Philippines. Meanwhile, holding down Europe, we have Germany, representing that historically interconnected Western European tradition. And straddling the line as this vast transcontinental presence, we have Russia, uniquely positioned to culturally and geographically bridge the East and the West. So we really aren't just looking at random names anymore, are we? We are looking at a highly structured dataset of diverse human experiences.
Contrasting these groupings reveals a pretty stark divide. On one hand, we've got this dominant Asian presence comprising 4 separate nations. On the other, singular European and Eurasian mentions, just 2 nations, Germany and Russia. The incredible cultural weight and sheer population mass of those 4 Asian nations just stands in super sharp contrast against the powerful yet numerically isolated presence of Germany and Russia. Structurally, the source material heavily weighs the East against very specific solitary mentions in the West and North.
All right, Section 4, the final global footprint. Time for connecting the dots.
Let's step back and see how this builds our larger understanding as we summarize the massive geographic span we've just mapped out. First off, this grouping represents massive global landmasses, literally millions of square miles and billions of citizens represented in a flash. Second, it highlights a heavily Eastern-weighted grouping. And third, and honestly perhaps most impressively, it encompasses staggering geographic extremes in a single breath. Instead of just thinking about vast distances, imagine the actual physical journey here. From the dense, temperate alpine forests and river valleys of Germany, stretching all the way across the freezing, sprawling steppes of Russia, all the way down to the volatile, breathtaking volcanic ring of fire hosting the Philippines and Indonesia. This brief 6-word quote spans almost every conceivable biome on Earth in mere seconds. No way you saw that coming from just a 6-word quote, right?
Which leaves us with a final and honestly profound question. What actually unites this specific, eclectic grouping of nations? I mean, why Malaysia, Germany, Russia, the Philippines, India, and Indonesia? What unlikely cultural and geographic bonds could possibly pull these distinct corners of the globe together into a single, unbroken thought? I want to invite you to really ponder what the unseen context of this source material could be. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating geographic puzzle on today's Explainer, and as always, keep asking those great questions.